Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, Burbank, California, and we're going to be in Honolulu, January 11th. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Arnaud Bertrand, he tweeted out this video, truly extraordinary, powerful interview of Dominique de Villepin, former Prime Minister of France. Here he talks about Gaza. He also talks about Ukraine. So you can turn it down. You can turn it down. So he says, today we no longer have a voice on the international scene. He's talking about France. Today, we no longer have a voice on the international scene. What do we have? We have Ukraine, which is accelerating and worsening. We have Gaza, which is undoubtedly the biggest historical scandal of, I don't even dare to find a reference, and of which nobody talks about in this country anymore. There's silence. It is taboo. The media don't talk about it anymore. I have to Google to find a press release that gives me news of the number of deaths that occur in Gaza. It is a real scandal in terms of democracy. And all this is in the name of what? In the name of war? Oh, it's war. It's war. It's like that. Okay, but it's not. It's not exactly a war like the others in Gaza, since it is civilian populations that die. So we are in an absurdity. We are in an absurdity, and France is fading away. It is France that's footing the bill, and I can't accept that. And then the interviewer says, we will come to that. The war has resulted in tens of thousands of deaths in Gaza. The Hamas Ministry of Health speaks of more than 40,000 deaths. The enclave is stuck in a humanitarian and health disaster. There is not only I heard that all the time. There's not only the Ministry of Health from Hamas, which says that there are 40,000 dead, there are probably many more. So from this basis, let's not give the feeling that it would be a number like that, unreliable. No, it's an unfortunate everyday reality. In Gaza, bodies torn to pieces, hearts are in pieces, souls are in pieces, heads are in pieces. And the idea of rebuilding and all this when there is no prospect, one must see that Israel is in the process of creating the conditions of a reoccupation of Gaza. Whether it's the southern line, whether it's the line that cuts in the middle, Gaza. Israel has regained possession of Gaza. The creation of a perimeter around Gaza is completely besieged. And thus, at a time when the West Bank itself is decomposing, we see it in the northern West Bank and in the southern West Bank. We are in front of a real time bomb. And then the interviewer says, well, what to do? What to do? What should France do according to you? What should the EU do? Or the United States? Since calls for a ceasefire, we've been seeing it for weeks. It doesn't work. What to do? He says, well, we have levers in terms of armament. We have levers. We have economic levers. We continue to accept to trade with a number of territories where colonization by Israel is active. But we refuse to use those levers with arguments which are absolutely unreal, culturally and intellectually speaking. You turn it up a little so you can hear how. That's good.
Un certain nombre de territoires où la colonisation israélienne est active, mais nous refusons de le faire sous des arguments qui sont absolument inouïs sur le plan culturel et intellectuel. Il faut laisser
We must leave Israel, fight its war until the end. But to what end? Yoav Gallant, the Israel Minister of Defense, says that Hamas has been eradicated in Gaza. What is the end? And it's the same problem in Ukraine as in Gaza. We have no political objective. Israel has no political objective. And when you have no political objective, the only thing you can do is war. In Ukraine, we did not give the means to Ukraine to achieve objectives, and we do not really know these objectives. That's why today everyone starts talking about peace again, and we are unfortunately excluded from these discussions. We have seen that the U.S. Secretary of State with the British Foreign Secretary, where's the French minister? Where's France? It's not there. In the same way in Gaza.
Il n'y a pas d'objectif
There is no
politique de la
political
part d'Israël.
objective on the
Il y a un
part of
objectif
Israel. There is a
sécuritaire,
security
il y a un
objective.
objectif
There is an
identitaire,
identity
il y a
objective. There is a
une folie
messianic
messianique,
madness.
et ça explique la
And that
catastrophe
explains the
qui nous est donnée à
catastrophe
voir.
that
Le
we are given to
monde
see. The
regarde
world is
cela,
watching
et
all
le
this,
monde en
and the
tire
world
les
draws the
conclusions, et c'est
conclusions.
en cela
And
que
this is
nous,
why we
Français,
French,
nous,
we
Européens,
Europeans,
nous, Occidentaux,
we
nous sommes
Westerners,
aujourd'hui
we are
pointés du
today
doigt
pointed
par un deux
out
poids, deux mesures
as
qui ne
double
pourra
standard
être
peddlers. This
sauvé
can only be
que par
solved
le droit international,
only by
que par le
international
retour de
law
la
and
justice.
only by the
Nous
return
aurons
of
à
justice. We will
payer
have to
autant
pay
en
cash
termes
in terms of effort and
d'effort et de
legitimacy,
légitimité, notre droit à
our right to
reparler
talk again
et redonner des
and
conseils
provide
en matière
advice again in
internationale. Il faudra
international
donner des
matters.
preuves.
We will need to make amends. That's a big statement. And here's what he says, I can't stress it enough, how rare it is to hear a former French prime minister speak like this. He says that France no longer has a voice on the international scene because, among other things, of its double standards and lack of action with regards to Gaza. He calls France's internal silencing of what's happening in Gaza a real scandal in terms of democracy, making France live in absurdity and resulting in it fading away. He says that we, France and the West in general, would have many levers to stop the war in terms of armament or economic sanctions, but we refuse to use the levers with arguments which are absolutely unreal, culturally or intellectually speaking. Saying we need to let Israel fight its war to the end, but what end? As a consequence, he says that France and the West will foot the bill for what's happening in terms of a loss of credibility and legitimacy. On Gaza specifically, he calls it undoubtedly the biggest historical scandal since, I don't even dare find a reference, calling it a war not like the others since it's the civilian populations that die. He also rebukes the journalists for using the usual term, according to the Hamas-run Ministry of Health, with regards to the numbers of death. There's not only the Ministry of Health from Hamas, which says that these are 40,000 dead, and there are probably many, many, many more. So from this basis, let's not give the feeling that it would be a number like that. Unreliable, no. Probably the most powerful quote of this interview literally gave me shivers. In Gaza, bodies are torn into pieces. Hearts are in pieces. Souls are in pieces. Heads are in pieces. He says that Israel has no political objective, and when you have no political objective, the only thing you can do is war. There is a security objective. There is an identity objective. There is a messianic madness, and that explains the catastrophe that we are witnessing. So it is good to hear a former French prime minister speak like that. I really just don't get Zionists. I get that you hate Palestinians and that people like Bill Maher have a hatred of Arabs and Muslims in general. They think they're lesser because of their ideology. Well, who has a higher body count? The Christians and Jews of the United States or the Muslims? It would be the Christians and Jews. Did the Muslims do Libya? Did the Muslims do Iraq? Did the Muslims do Syria? You know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying here? That these are CIA operations. So, and everybody's holy book is full of crazy shit. Is the Quran full of crazy shit? Yes. You know what else is? The Bible. You ever read it? I'm a good Catholic, so we don't read the Bible. I was brought up Catholic anyway. It's full of all kinds of crazy, devious sexual shit. Give your daughter to be raped. All kinds of crazy stuff. So, hey, the mainstream media is unreliable. That's why you watch this show. It's dishonest. That's why you watch this show. How can you trust them when they're never, ever told the truth about Russiagate, Julian Assange, Ukraine, Syria? Well, that's where our sponsor, Ground News, comes in. Ground News is an app and a website that gathers related articles from around the world in one place so you can compare the kind of coverage like the kind of that we do on this show. That's kind of like what we do on this show. We show you how, look at how they're covering it. and then we debunk it for you. Well, Ground News is very similar. Let's take a closer look at some of Ground News' coverage on President Trump's attempted assassination. Ground News gives me instant access to more than 700 articles reporting on it all over the world with context on each publication's political bias. Factuality based on how subjective or objective their language is, and even who is funding those people. So comparing the coverage is absolutely fascinating to me. Left-leaning USA Today and ABC News downplayed the shooting by writing that Trump was removed from the stage after loud noises startled him and rang out in the crowd. I wouldn't say USA is left-leaning. I'd say they're establishment-leaning.
Mm-hmm.
The Irish Times went as far as victim blaming, adding that the assassination attempt might even help him win the White House. Right-leaning outlets like the Daily Signal and the New York Post were really quick to call out liberal media's biased coverage, reporting that their bias was on full display. Unfortunately, moments like these can fuel the fires of misinformation, and very inaccurate narratives can spread like wildfire. The only way to combat this is to stay informed through really diverse news sources, something Ground News simplifies and excels at. I mean, they even created a blind spot feed to expose what the other side of the political spectrum isn't reporting on, freeing readers of any hidden agendas and political spins. With media bias just running crazy like it is, I can't recommend subscribing to Ground News enough to stay fully informed on topics with explosive headlines. So go to Ground News, go to ground.news/JD with my link in the description to get 40% off their Vantage subscription, which will give you unlimited access to all their analysis and features. See through mainstream media narratives at Ground News. Let me give it to you again. Ground.news/JD. Subscribe this month through my link for 40% off unlimited access to Ground News. My link right there. Go there. You get 40% off. It's a great news site. Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, Burbank, California, and we're going to be in Honolulu, January 11th. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.